The October tally of gold purchases by the central banks doubled that of the 12-month average over the last year. And the central banks are buying hand over fist again. China is doubling down their purchases. They never stopped. And that was evidenced by the import export numbers out of Switzerland and the United Kingdom. They were buying stuff, as we've talked about, through the People's Liberation Army, which is not reported to the IMF as it would be if it was done by the PBOC. They're buying through proxy banks, commercial banks in China that are not directly reporting that to the IMF as they work on behalf, behind the scenes of the PBOC. We've talked a lot about how they have been buying doré and concentrate from South America, Latin America. And there was just a report that came out that said 78% right now, 78% of their raw silver is coming from South America at the current time in the form of concentrate. And so, you know, the amount of purchasing that we are seeing, it's probably why we've seen the bullion banks start to cover. I think they realize that the purchasing is not ending. When we saw Trump win the election, there was a euphoria, and rightfully so, as we've talked about, for many reasons. This gave the bullion banks the ability to push the ball down the hill to get it rolling, and the managed money, who was sitting on a lot of profits, capitalized by cashing out, which allowed the bullion banks to push the price further. It kept falling and falling and falling. Gold fell by $200, and a lot of those short contracts were covered. But this was an opportune moment, really, for the central banks, who have been buying it hand over fist, and it hasn't stopped. And you know, really, the big buyers are the People's Bank of China, the Saudi Central Bank, along with Turkey, along with Kazakhstan, along with India. These countries and Poland are buying hand over fist to the point where we now have, you know, it's up many-fold from what it is on a moving average. And you mentioned something that we've talked about a lot as well, and that is the repatriation of gold. We've talked about that for a long time, how the West has, I think, it lost its, you could say its trust, you could say it's the West's decline in financial dominance. It's the fact that these countries don't want to keep their gold or silver any longer at the Bank of England or at the New York Fed. And as we've said a lot, the Bank of England gives direct access with safety, supposedly, to the London Metals Exchange, or the LBMA, and the Bank of Federal Reserve Bank in New York to the COMEX. We are now seeing up to 78% of all of the world's gold, that, or at least the central bank gold held, is now in the countries that possess it. So in other words, another way of saying that is that 22%, that's it, 22% of central bank gold is held in these locations to give direct access to the COMEX and the LBMA. So, you know, 1 out of every 4 ounces, the rest has been repatriated. This is a big deal. Maybe 1 out of 5 ounces, actually. It's a very big deal. In 1972, it was half of the gold. 50% of it was held at the Bank of England and the New York Fed. It's now down to 22%. It's a big deal. And it really, I think, goes to show that these countries are no longer trusting that we will even repatriate or return their gold, rather, just like what happened to Venezuela. It's a big deal. And I think it will continue to happen. Not only are these institutions draining the world's supply, but they're no longer leaving it in custody with the West. Big deal, and rightfully so. We've shown that weaponization is something that we're okay doing. Venezuela and Afghanistan both asked for their gold back from the LBMA, and they were denied. And so when you see, for example, the People's Bank of China buying huge amounts of gold from the LBMA, they're immediately repatriating it so that they too are not going to be, or risk being, denied access to their reserves. And so this is a big deal. And I think people need to understand that the exchanges on the West, I think, have an expiration. You're seeing the cumulative volume of the Shanghai Metals Exchange and the Shanghai Futures Exchange has overtaken that of the COMEX, rendering it the #2 most frequently and actively traded market in the world. We are hearing rumblings, of course, of the BRICS building their own metals exchange, and I do believe that is exactly what is in the cards. These countries have been using our suppression, our naked shorting, which you know we're going to talk about in a moment, which is as dumb as a mud wall, against us, and standing for delivery and repatriating the metal. And this is something that I don't think will change. I think they'll continue to do it. They'll continue, and the reason they didn't yank it all is that they want to continue to play the game, and that game, in my mind, is continuing to allow the West to be stupid enough to suppress the price of gold and silver.
Yep.
And they will stand for delivery. This is an option that never happened before. And as I've said on your show a million times, the countries that have done this were never coordinated, motivated, or sophisticated enough to do it, or wealthy enough. Now they are on every level. And it ultimately will bleed the system dry. And they have to do it in a very methodical manner in order not only to get the most that they can squeeze out of the system, but also for the system not to just immediately break. The COMEX would break immediately and would go force majeure and would be cash settled. Instead, they have been using something called exchange for physical, which is where you buy a contract in the West and have it delivered in places like London, in places like even Hong Kong, where there is a contract, a COMEX contract delivers to Brinks Hong Kong, where then it is picked up by a Brinks truck and delivered to the Shanghai Metals Exchange. And it's ironic that most of the gold that is delivered off the COMEX is part of their mini contract kilo bar form, which is what is traded primarily in China. In fact, when the 400-ounce good delivery bars are bought off of the LBMA, they are immediately refined into and melted down and refined into kilo bars just to erase all trace of them whatsoever. And we talk about the exchange for physical. Now, the premium on exchange for physical has shot through the roof, and it happened a day or two ago. And everyone only thinks of exchange for physical going from west to east, but oftentimes when you have these naked short positions on COMEX and there is a delivery, there will be exchange for physical coming back to the West, coming from, let's just say, London, and to be able to make good on deliveries. And the premium on this just shot right off the chart a day and a half ago, which is a big deal because it signals a tightness, if you will, in these bars. Now, what it really means is something that I think it's very interesting going forward with the Trump administration. And what's going on with the premiums and the futures price in gold today was up by over $60 an ounce, or 2% above the New York or the London spot. Silver was up $1 over London spot, a 3% difference. This is on the futures. And the reason that this is happening is that there has been rumor that Trump is going to put tariffs on precious metals that are coming into the country. And you have all of these naked shorts that are freaking out, and they don't have the metal standing behind the naked shorts. So they have to get it now, close out their shorts and cover now and bring the metal home from London before the inauguration, because you know, this is a preemptive risk hedging, I guess you could say, with these banks that are, I think, facing existential threat on something like a massive short squeeze. Well, this is how it happens. If he really does puts tariffs on gold and silver, you will see a massive drive to cover short positions that are back naked, and the metal has to come from somewhere. Often it does come from London. They would end up putting a 10%, a 15%, who knows how high that tariff is. But this is why you're seeing short covering that pushed the price up over the last few days. And this is also why you're seeing a big spread between London spot and the futures by as much as 3%. These traders are basically saying, if we don't do this now and close out our position, if he puts the tariffs on, we're dead. The price can go to the moon. Well over $3,000 an ounce in gold, and much, much, much higher in silver. So much so And I don't like to make predictions, but I would make a prediction that we see a really strong rally into the end of the year as a result of this. And this is just the very beginning. It will be an interesting thing to watch. We'll see what happens over the next few days. This is similar to what we saw during COVID. It was the other way around. There were big premiums on future, on spot over future. The other way around here, not there, because there was worry about the ability to get metal here because of the supply chain disruptions. And so you would see the price $70, $80 higher than the futures price. Well, it's the other way around now, because they're basically saying in the future, you put these tariffs on, prices are going to go way higher. And you look on the futures market right now and look into the March contract, and the prices are way higher than spot is right now. It's very bullish for both gold and silver, and underscores how stupid these banks are. It also underscores the sensitivity of the precious metals market to things like policy developments or geopolitical risks, where just like that, things change. And this is all happening kind of under the radar, as most people are fixated on what we've seen with cryptocurrencies. They're not noticing this. And here we are right back up above 2,700 as we speak right now. The gold is almost 2,730, pretty darn close to where it was before all of this started. Silver is just over $32 an ounce. So we're climbing right back to where we were. The banks were able to cover a bunch of their shorts. And here we go, back to the upside again. Only now you have something that could potentially usher in, honestly, a real squeeze. A squeeze because these short positions are massive. 700 million plus ounces of silver on COMEX, 4 to 6 billion ounces short on the LBMA. I mean, this is rocket fuel type of potential if this continues to move the way that it is.